Hello and welcome to another TLDR UK video. The idea of a Brexit festival isn't a new one, with proponents hoping that a festival celebrating British culture, arts and technology will not only help bring together a divided nation, but also demonstrate Britain's influence on the international stage. It seems like a bold plan, and while it's an interesting idea, we've never discussed it before because it never really felt like something real enough to bother discussing. That changed this week with the Chancellor's spending review, which included £29 million set aside for the event. And that's just one small part of the £120 million budget the project's been promised. So in this video, we're going to discuss the Festival of Brexit, what the public money's funding, what it hopes to achieve, and what the reality might look like. Before we start though, you might already know that we have another channel called TLDR Daily, where every weekday we publish a video summarising the day's biggest news events. You might also know that every Saturday we publish an episode of our series This Week in Parliament over there too. What you might not know is that on Monday we're holding a live event where we run down the 100 weirdest, funniest and craziest news stories of 2020, all while the audience makes my job as the newsreader much harder. To watch the event, click the link down below, subscribe to TLDR Daily, and hit the bell to be notified when we go live. Thanks for your support. Despite the major funding announcement this week, the idea of a Brexit festival isn't a new one. It was actually first proposed by Theresa May back in 2018, with the former Prime Minister proposing that the event could mark Brexit as a national renewal and celebrate our nation's diversity and talent. The idea was then greenlit by Johnson's government in 2019, and then obviously partially funded earlier in the week. The festival, despite widely being nicknamed the Brexit Festival and seemingly celebrating the UK's newfound independence, has actually temporarily been renamed FestivalUK 2022, which honestly, please be a temporary name because that's just garbage. Anyway, as the name suggests, the event is set to take place in 2022, which is as late as you'd expect any government-organised celebration to be. Anyway, enough snark aside, what's FestivalUK 2022 actually going to be about? Well, according to the festival's chief creative officer, Martin Green, it's definitely not about Brexit, and instead about delivering a bit of joy and hope and happiness. Although he has conceded that this project was conceived to happen after our exit from the EU, and acknowledges that we have been going through and are going through a divisive time. So the idea is that the festival can bring Britain back together and unify the nation once again. These lofty ambitions are set to be fulfilled through 10 virtual or physical events, which will together form the festival. Now, if that sounds confusing and vague, I'm afraid I've got bad news for you. It doesn't get a whole lot clearer. In fact, that lack of clarity is really clarified by one remark made by Green earlier this year, saying that the project might last a day or a year. It might be one big act or 10 million tiny acts. The idea seems to be, though, that a bunch of creative teams will be given money to, in the words of a Guardian columnist supporting the idea, mix up the arts, science, tech and culture into a wild melee of creative grassroots projects popping up all over the country. So let's just say the festival lacks some clarity at the moment. And to be fair, we're still a year or two out, so they do still have time to pull things together. The bigger question, though, is what we're actually pouring public funds into. Because while £29 million was assigned to the project in this week's spending review, the total festival budget is expected to be £120 million. The promised benefit of the event isn't something tangible. It's a promise of a reunified Britain and an Isles united who project power, creativity and strength globally. Now, those are some nice words and sentiments. Certainly no one wants Britain to become even more divided. But the big question is whether a multi-million pound project is the way to do that, or if this is just a huge waste of public funds at a time when the economy's already struggling. The problem with judging the festival at this point, though, and maybe the reason why we should hold judgment, is that the benefit is intangible. Think back to the 2012 Olympics. When it was announced that the British bid had been successful, some sceptics were concerned that the Games could be an expensive embarrassment. In fact, the news was full of pessimistic scandals all the way up to the Games themselves. When the event came and went though, the sentiment had significantly changed, with 78% of Brits saying that the Games did a valuable job of cheering up a country in hard times. London 2012 was a truly unusual event in that it did genuinely seem to bring the nation together somehow. Sure, some probably still scoffed at the expense and corporate nature of the events, but broadly it did seem that the Games, at least temporarily, brought the country together. So the hope is that the festival could do the same. I mean, Green, the man they put in charge, was even the head of ceremonies at London 2012. It's impossible to tell whether these plans will be successful though, or if this is just an expensive festival that could actually drive us further apart. And there is a good reason for some skepticism. The Olympics are a very unique event that truly captures global attention and helps catapult national pride. The question is whether a handful of virtual and/or physical events are able to do the same. And while they might be trying to distance the event from Brexit, it's going to be hard to really sell that to the public, meaning that half of the population is likely to be very sceptical of the idea of celebrating Brexit. Even the idea of celebrating Britishness is somewhat controversial at this point, and skating the lines between healthy patriotism and supporting British culture without falling into a world of jingoism and embarrassing self-parody could be quite difficult. And the timing of these plans is especially interesting. I don't need to tell you this, but we're currently in the middle of a pandemic, and the economy's taken a beating. One industry hit especially hard is arts and culture, an industry where Britain is actually a world leader. While discussing Brexit, we hear a lot about the importance of the British fishing industry, which represents 0.1% of GDP. So we often miss how vital Britain's creative industries actually are. Not only are they exceptionally valuable, with the sectors covered by the Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sport bringing in £224 billion a year, they're also just important for Britain. As a nation hoping to forge its own path forward in the world and make a fresh British mark on the globe, culture and media really is the ideal way to do that. There's obviously a number of factors, but one of the reasons the US is so influential worldwide is the ubiquity of its media. Almost no matter where you are in the world, you're likely pretty familiar with the US, at very least through American culture. And to a lesser extent, the same is true for Britain, with hugely influential music, TV and cinema coming from the UK, helping to cement the UK's place in the world. The concern is therefore that COVID and the economic collapse is hurting this industry worse than almost any other, and that the industry isn't getting anywhere near the attention it needs. This is an argument that's been going on throughout the pandemic, with many creative fields saying that their work isn't being safeguarded in the same way that shops and manufacturers are receiving support. Some would argue that this festival is the ideal solution. It not only promotes British culture, hopefully increasing its influence globally, but it also pours money into creative arts. The problem is that this likely isn't the most effective way of giving money to creatives. In a time when so many people and industries are desperately in need of help, a huge festival indirectly supporting creative fields not only feels a little ineffective, but maybe even a bit crass. Also, considering how the government has handled recent contracts, especially surrounding PPE, some are sceptical that this festival could actually support creative businesses who need it, with the potential that some portion of the money could end up being funneled to the government's supporters within the media, rather than those who are most deserving. But what do you think? Is the Festival of Brexit, FestivalUK 2022, the right way forward? Is this actually going to pull the country together and support creative arts? Or is it just a vanity project that risks wasting millions and creating a controversy that could push us further apart? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a new video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of our videos, then you too can back us on Patreon. The link to that's in the description.